Hi, this is Pam from Your Nurse Advocates Consulting, one of your nurse advocates, and it is another Tuesday Tips. So I just want to welcome everybody to Tuesday Tips. And this week, we're going to talk about a couple of stories of former clients that we've had to show some family collaboration and how everybody chips in. And it's okay to need a little help from such as an advocate, just to ensure that your loved one gets the best care possible. So we're going to start out with a story, and these are true stories, and for privacy, I'm certainly not going to mention any names, but the scenarios are real. And this one gentleman, he was on a cruise and he fell, and uh, they were not in United States waters, and this gentleman ended up having to go into a foreign hospital, a hospital in Mexico, and in assessing this gentleman's injuries, it was determined that things seemed to be okay. They missed the fact that the neck was fractured. So it had some cervical fractures that could have been very dangerous. And so this gentleman, he lived alone. He was a widow, and he lived alone, and he was living in Florida during prior to going to the cruise. And so what happened next is that they had family in Wisconsin, they had family in Texas, they had family in Kansas, and the one daughter in Texas was suggested that he can come and stay with her. And so they got him there and got him evaluated and assessed. Ended up having those cervical fractures, so we had to have spinal surgery. And all along, this was all going on in Kansas, and the gentleman had a Florida Medicare Advantage plans. So for any of those, you or any of your aging loved ones that have a Medicare Advantage plan, they are very regional. Sometimes the region is very small. Sometimes the region can spread out to another state or so, but usually the regions are very limited with Medicare Advantage plans. And so family found out. They did this work on their own. The family really pulled together, and everybody took their own tasks. The son was managing the finances. The daughter in Kansas was getting the healthcare things in order. But they just didn't know where to start. They said, okay, well, how do I even go about getting her care now in Kansas? How do we move her and all her doctors? How do we put all of that together? How do we get her the care that she needs? She's unable to get out of he was unable to get out of bed by himself. He needed help, someone with him 24/7. The care in the nursing home that he was at, there were some issues there. So they decided to bring him home before he was able to complete the rehab. And so the family really did everything that they possibly could. And so a friend of theirs, through a friend of a friend, knew about our services. So we were able to jump in and help them and find out that with their insurance plan, that they had a Medicare Advantage plan. We found out that the insurance would cover the surgery and anything related to that fall because that was an emergency. But in the nursing home, it was out of network, out of state. They would only approve the 20 days. So after 20 days, they decided that they, would go home because now the insurance was no longer going to cover the rehab stay. So just so happens what I did as a nurse advocate is I researched the Medicare Advantage plans that are in their Kansas area, in their county, and looked at the ratings. So I found out which ones had good ratings and which ones didn't. We narrowed it down to a few so that, again, it's not our job to make any decisions or recommendations or, give our opinions. It's our job to pull together all the facts present them to our client and the family so that they can make an educated decision on what's best for them. So we were able, one of the highest ratings of the insurance that we found in their area. We got very lucky. It just happened to be the same company that was providing the insurance coverage in Florida. So it ended up being a one call, but they didn't know that. And this is one of the things that we like to stress is, people don't know what they don't know. And that's the advantage of having a nurse advocate, is that we can read between the lines. We know what should be there. We know what's missing, and we know what to ask. And so they had no idea that this Florida insurance would cover her in Kansas. And it might not have, had it not been the same company. But with one phone call to her Florida Medicare Advantage plan, or the daughter, when she called the Florida Medicare Advantage plan, her father was able to just switch the plan over to a Kansas Medicare Advantage plan with the same company. So it was very streamlined. Coverage starts April 1st. We're mid-March. So she's going to get a follow-up appointment, or he's going to get a follow-up appointment with a primary care provider, established care. And as of April 1st, he will be covered for all unrelated care to this emergency. So that was the first big step that we had to go through before we could look at plans for his care. How do we get him home care? How do we get all these things? We first had to figure out that payer source, because we can get all the services and get all the care arranged. But if we don't know who's going to pay for it and how much that's going to cost out of pocket, that's one of the things that we can do, is help sort out the finances based on the type of care. So the daughter, she works, and so she was looking for some supportive home care. Now, he really needed skilled home health, which is covered by Medicare at 100%, but we didn't have that Medicare set up yet in Kansas. So in the meantime, while that's getting set between now and April 1st, we were able to get a non-medical home care agency to provide personal cares and assistance with getting to the doctor appointment, and just companion care, bathing, light meals, some light housekeeping, things like that. And that is private pay anyway. So I didn't feel bad helping them line up those services, because those services were not going to be covered under insurance anyway. So we got that set up. That really helped the daughter be able to get her work done and do what she needed to do with her family, while her dad was getting the care that he needs, and allows her some private time and some self-care time and some work time when someone else could help, pay or help support her dad. So that was the next hurdle. Those were the two most important things. When I got the phone call, it was, we're bringing him home. What do we do? How does this work? How do we get help? What do we do for insurance? So those were the most urgent things that we took care of right away. And now we're working on, the things that can take a little bit more time. Now that we have a payer source, we have follow-up appointments set up, everything is all good. We have healthcare arranged. And now I'm going to be working with him. He's decided that he really, loves his independence and really would be, he wants to be on his own. So we're going to be looking at some alternative senior care housing and communities for him, in Kansas, so he can be close to his daughter that's willing to help with cares, and just what that's going to look like. And when we're looking at those types of things, sometimes people focus on just assisted living. Now, he's had a spine surgery. We don't know. I mean, he's going to need some rehab. As of the first of the month, we can get some home health care, some skilled care, some therapy in the home, whether he's here or whether we get him into a different type of community. But there's things to consider. There's independent living. That means there's independent apartments. They sometimes have housekeeping. There may be, they may provide 1 to 3 meals a day in a dining hall in the building that people, choose to come to when they want. So that's senior. So you have to be independent. You have to be able to perform all your own cares. You have to, be able to, administer your own medicines and things like that. And then the next level would be assisted living. Now, assisted living means you could get some cares, you can get some help with your personal cares. You can get some medication help, some assistance, your meals. You can get some personal care assistance. And there's even different levels of assisted living. Some assisted livings have what they call enhanced care, which means they actually can care for someone that needs a two-person transfer, or they're using a lift, someone that can't get out of bed by themselves. So all of these things need to be considered when you're looking at what would be the best fit. And then there's the memory care, and then there's rehab care, and then there's custodial care or long-term care, which is provided from a nursing home for people that need ongoing daily needs more than what they can get assisted living. So the next step for us is we're going to be working with him to determine what level of care is going to be best for him. And if he, there are some communities now, it's becoming very popular, that provide all of the same services on one campus, which means if you could start out at independent living, then if you need to later on, years down the road, you can be assisted living. And then if need be, somewhere down the road, if you were to need rehab or a nursing home, you never have to change. Everything stays the same. You're all on one campus. You may change, buildings, and you may change some caregivers, but it's all the same company, all the same. So the transition becomes very, very smooth, and it really cuts down on not having to keep moving. And so that's something that a lot of people aren't aware of, that those communities exist. So that's what we're going to be working on next. So with this particular client, it was more logistics. How do we, someone was moving, changing states, was injured, out of the country. So how do we put a plan? How do we get everything back to normal? And so that would be, what we're doing in this case. The second case that I want to mention is regarding, and we've talked about this many times, is talking about transitions in care. Transitions in care is when someone moves from one level of care to another. And this particular client of ours, this is a monthly client. So the nice thing about having our monthly clients is that if something happens, if there's a change in healthcare, then we already know the history, we already know the medicines, we already are very familiar with the case. We can jump in and work with the doctors and make sure nothing gets missed. And so this particular gal fell in the shower, broke her ankle, went in the emergency room, was going to have surgery, and expected an overnight stay, 1 to 2 nights. 1 to 2 nights turned into 3 nights, turned into pneumonia, turned into adult respiratory distress syndrome, ending her up in the intensive care unit on very high flow oxygen. They ended up having to intubate her or put a breathing tube in and put her on a breathing machine or a ventilator to let her lungs rest so that she could try and get over this pneumonia. Now, during this time, you remember she was in a very large, reputable hospital. But you got to remember that all the doctors, they all have their own lanes. She had an orthopedic doctor. She had a hospitalist. She had an intensive care doctor. She had other doctors that were coming in and out based on what symptoms and what was going on at the time. So all these doctors are all treating her from their lane. But what we had trouble with, and what the family relied on us as nurse advocates, is that we had to keep all the pieces in the puzzle together and all the balls, in the air at the same time. For example, they were not aware, and they, did not realize that she was on fluid restrictions. She was limited to 32 ounces of water per day. They did not know that. So when she got in the hospital, they had trouble with her sodium being too low because they were not aware of that. We had to bring that to their attention when I was looking, at labs and working with the family. And so then when she got the pneumonia, then when she ended up in ICU, the orthopedic doctor had to have a boot on her at all times after fixing her ankle. Well, in the intensive care unit, they were taking the boot off. Well, she ended up having what they call foot drop, where the foot drops down, and it could freeze that way if that tendon freezes. So twice the orthopedic surgeon had to go to ICU and manipulate and push that foot back up so that she wouldn't lose that normal position, that normal function of that foot. So, I mean, after 2 times, I finally said to the family, physically put a note on the door saying, do not remove the boot. And so the communication and the different specialties and orders going from one different type of doctor to another, was the communication was really troublesome. And we really had to stay on top of everything, and all her labs and everything that was going on. Another thing that was missed was she had some depression issues. So she's on some medication that got completely changed and all discombobulated, during the hospital. So we had to stay on top of that, and we got behavioral health. So she was able to get, we asked for that specialty to come in to help, because she had some anxiety and had some issues that we needed to get her some help. And so then she went from the hospital to rehab. Well, I made sure, because 65% of medication errors occur when a person transfers from one level of care to another. That's when most of the healthcare medical medication errors occur. So we were diligent with checking her med list. I wanted to go over the discharge instructions before she left the hospital. I did that with the doctor because I wanted to make sure that nothing was missed. Then she went to rehab, and we had to go through the same thing again, constant contact with the rehab, about things getting missed. And when she came home from rehab, sure as shooting, there was a medication error that we caught. The behavioral health and nurse practitioner put one of her medications, her depression medications, on hold the morning that she was going to go home. Her discharge instructions were already printed. It had the medication on that she was supposed to continue to take it when she was not supposed to take it and was going to be on hold. So that came through a series of investigative work between myself and the son and the husband to catch that error. So don't feel bad. But the other message I want to say with this is that it really does take a diligent effort to make sure that mistakes don't occur. Nobody makes a mistake on purpose. It's not that people are being negligent on purpose. It's just, again, a lot of these errors occur because of lack of communication. And that's where we really need to bridge that gap. And as you advocate for your loved one, just having to, and I'm sorry to say that long gone are the days where you just turn everything over to your healthcare provider and the system, and you rely on them to make sure everything's great. We have to advocate for our loved ones, because there's mistakes that do occur. So that is the two stories that we wanted to share for these Tuesday tips. So, please be diligent and in making sure that as your aging loved one goes through these different levels of care, or has an experience where they're changing states or moving or coming in to move with you, just realize there's really more to it than just saying, hey, mom, come on over. Hey, dad, come on over. You could live with me, and we got a doctor appointment for you next week, and think that everything's going to be fine, because you may find yourself with a medical bill that they won't pay for. So a lot of things. So that's why we're here. We are here to help prevent your aging loved ones and their families from falling through the cracks because they didn't know what they didn't know, and they didn't know what to ask. So that's our Tuesday tips for this week. We will see you back next week for another episode or another session of Tuesday tips. So have a great rest of your week. We'll see you soon. Take care.